Hello, my name's Mike M0MSN, and yes, another day of wind and rain, and yeah, it's pretty nasty out, but never mind. Anyway, have you ever wondered how a fan dipole antenna actually works? Why is it that you've got so many different lengths of wire, yet it seems to work okay on each frequency? Well, I've tried to make a video to explain just how that works. Pay attention to this figure here. This is the impedance. Okay. And if you notice, it's close to 50, sometimes wobbles onto 50, depends if the wind's blowing or not on the DX Commander. Now, the DX Commander is an all-band vertical. It's a fan dipole, but a vertical one. And as you can see, the SWR is relatively low, 1.2 at 52, 51 ohms. 1.1 as it comes down to the 50 ohm. But the wind's blowing it around a little bit, so it's changing ever so slightly. And if you also notice that the MFJ frequency counter is up and down a little bit as well. This is due to the batteries not being 100%, but there we are. So it's up and down a bit. So let's move the frequency. As we come down in frequency, you can see the impedance rising. The SWR goes up with the impedance until we get slightly out of range here at 3.5 megahertz, or 3.6 nearly, and it's 2. So we can come back again the other way, come up in frequency, and you can see that this antenna, I've tuned it to be resonant, should we say, on the voice part of the 80 meter band. Okay, let's flick frequencies so that we can play with the 7 megahertz 40 meter band. Let's come down. Again, keep your eye on the impedance, the R figure there. And as we come into range, just below the 200 point, we should see it start getting closer and closer to our impedance frequency. There we go. Go back up a bit. So again, 7.1, and we've got an SWR of 1.1, where we can get it at 1.14, really delicate. Anyway, but I'm doing nothing to the aerial. The aerial is cut to a resident length. The impedance matches the radio and the coax line impedance. The SWR is nice and low. Now with fan dipoles, if I'm transmitting on a different frequency to where the aerial is resonant, the SWR is obviously higher, and the impedance is either lower or higher, but it's not what the radio wants to see. Let's draw a simple dipole. Fan 1. With our different length elements. This side, let's put our coax in. Oh, awful drawing. We'll put our coax in, and this side will connect to this side. Boom. And the center core will be connected to this side, okay? And this is going to go off to our radio. And this is a 50 ohm coax feed. The radio, our TX down here, is also 50 ohm. Boom, 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 boom. And our antenna, for perfect resonance, needs to be 50 ohms. So let's pretend this is the 20 meter band, 14 point, I don't know, 200. cut perfectly for 14200. So the impedance on the bottom one at that frequency is 50 ohms, let's call it, so for simplicity. Our center dipole is for the 40 meter band, 7.1 megahertz, and that 50 ohms at 7.1 megahertz. And the long one, we'll call it for the 80 meter band, so 3.7 megahertz, and that's 50 ohms at that frequency. Now our radio waves, or RF, requires 50 ohms for it to be a perfect match. So why is it that it doesn't get upset by those? Well, at 14.2 megahertz, the 40 meter antenna and the 80 meter antenna both represent a very, very high impedance. And RF is pretty much like water. It wants to take the easiest route. So if the 14.2 megahertz element is showing the correct impedance or close to it, then the RF is likely or more likely to take that route. And the same is true as if we were trying to put a 40 meter signal down. So if we were trying to transmit at 7.1 megahertz, the 14 megahertz antenna is going to be showing a very high impedance, and the 80 would be showing a very high impedance, but our 40 meter element would be showing the correct impedance. So again, just like water, it's going to want to go down the easiest route, that of less resistance. So that's why a fan dipole works. To put it into a bit more ease of context for you, if you can imagine the child's toy, okay, the shape box that we used to have, where we used to have the I think it was the cross, and we had a square, and a triangle, and I think the circle, wasn't it? And the child's toy, where we had the different shapes. Well, RF, if you can imagine and stretch the imagination a little bit here, is pretty much the same. If we have a triangle, our RF, and that's for the 40 meter band, and the next shape we have is the circle, and that's for, let's say, the 10 meter band, and we have a square for the 20 meter band, and the cross for the 80 meter band. And this is how we can represent our RF frequencies. Every frequency has a slightly different shape. So if we try putting our 10 meter frequency into any of the aerials that are not the right shape, it won't pass, it won't go through. High resistance, the edges get caught. You can't knock it through. It's the square peg in the round hole syndrome. But if you've got the right size aerial, it represents the right impedance, then the RF for the 10 meter will go down the 10 meter hole. The 40 meter will go down the 40 meter hole, and so on and so on and so forth. I hope that's helped. Cheers for now.